So there is a really big misconception about personal sovereignty and freedom that we need to talk about. So that sovereignty is more individualism. So it's like, oh, if I'm sovereign, that means I can handle everything myself, that I have all the money I need to do whatever I want in the world, that I'm free of the system, that I'm out of the matrix, or that, I don't have to deal with anyone or anything unless I really want to. And the truth is that we need human beings, need to belong, to have reciprocity, and sovereignty can be that you know how to access resources in your community, with other people, within your family unit, or that you're still somewhat reliant on these other things, but you have the freedom of choice to choose to engage in it with that, which then is what meets your needs. That is still sovereignty when you know that you're making the decision for yourself. That's really the bottom line when we talk about personal freedom and what we at This Modern Mystic call unshackling the mind, which is that you know that you're making the choice from consciousness, your own consciousness, that this isn't just a programmed choice or, influenced by your culture, your parents, or things that you're attached to, right? That you're making this decision because it is in your highest good and it is where you want to move towards. And so freedom can look a lot different than what people online are really spewing it as. It's not this like ultra wealthy version of hyper independence. That's actually the continued distortion of what America likes to push and program us with, which is separation. That if I can just do it all myself, and if I am just as strong as I can, and I can function perfectly in every area of my life, then I won't need anyone. I won't be vulnerable to anyone. And that's really what that's saying. When I work with individuals that are super high performing, and I know this because I've been through that too. I thought that if I just, I was totally on the whole feminist train when I was younger because I was raised to be. I did do that. I was a single mom. I went and got my master's degree. I was working 2 jobs. I had my own apartment, and I wasn't welcome at home or that's a whole different story. So I didn't get to really choose my sovereignty, but I had to be independent because there was no other choice. And so then I just continued. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to school. I worked 2 jobs and I did my internship, and I was a single mom. And granted, I had her father and his family that was able to balance some of that for me. So it made it possible. And so I'm not saying that I did that alone. And I don't think it's a flex to even say that I had to, because I want people to know the truth, which the truth is that when you have resources because you have relationships with other people in your life, that's a flex. Having coherent, loving, supportive relationships that are reciprocal and respectful, and where you don't have to hide who you truly are, and you get to say, this is what I need. Is that something you can fulfill for me? That's amazing. And so I had to learn not to be so hyper independent. I had to learn that I actually didn't want to be. Being a boss babe, where I had my own career and I had my own house and I was a single mom and I was handling everything at almost the top of my career, very quickly, I was just perpetuating my own perfectionism and my own lack of trust in other people. And I was perpetuating the fact that I didn't know how to have healthy relationships where I could express who I was and still be met with that respect, and that I was able to do that for them and vice versa, and that we could co-create together. And so I'm speaking from experience that I know that hyper independence doesn't work. And I'm not interested in being hyper independent or being hyper wealthy so that I can be hyper independent. That you can be sovereign and meet your needs in many different ways. With this being connected to how we're kind of groomed in America, that we believe that our own well-being, if we're just sovereign and free, then, and we're not reliant on other people or our community, that's showing me a lack of vulnerability, that this person doesn't feel safe in being vulnerable. And I will tell you, Again, because I'm working with individuals who work through this, I also know, and I have, because of my own energetic signature, attracted very hyper independent women. And they are the hardest people to help sometimes. And even the older generation where they're like, I can handle everything, I can do everything. And I'm just like, let me cook you a meal. Let me pay you back that $20 you lent me 5 months ago. Like, why can you not receive? Because you're about to be old as fuck and you need to receive. You need community, you need support, you need people who can cook with you. You don't want to be alone in your elderly age. You don't want to be building structures on land by yourself because you think that you have to do it all yourself. That's not a flex. That's hyper independence and trauma. It's an identity issue. And unfortunately, our society feeds off of that. And that's also where a lot of toxic spirituality comes into place, because it perpetuates this idea that we cannot rely on other people, that we should have all of our resources figured out by ourselves. And that's not sustainable. And people who start building sustainable, they want to go live on a homestead and be self-sustaining. We figured that out too, real quick. We live out in the country and we can't do this alone. There's no way that we can do this alone. And you shouldn't have to do it alone. And so the quicker that you learn to receive and to be vulnerable and say, this is what my need is. And then for those who are used to being hyper independent and you maybe feel like, well, every time I ask for what I need, it gets thrown back at me. Yeah, we have to work through this with each other. There's a lot that my husband and I have worked through together. I've had to learn to fall back into my feminine and receive more from him, because this hyper independence is a distortion of the masculine and feminine. Patriarchy is still a distortion of the masculine and feminine. I had to sit back and learn how to receive from my husband and let him serve me, to take care of me when I was postpartum, for example, or to sit back and not rescue him from financial concerns so that he could step up into his sovereignty and not collapse under that pressure, but support him still emotionally while I was recovering from my postpartum. You can see all of these ways that it kind of plays out, and it can get really intense. So there's, of course, so much grace and love to each other while we're going through this. There's ways that he also has to learn to receive, because, again, all of us are wounded by the masculine and feminine. There are so many of us, we've perpetuated this over, I would say, even 3-5 generations now, where women have to be hyper strong and independent because they don't trust the masculine to take care of them, because they have been harmed. And while there is so much grief and processing that we need to do to let go of that, but then we need to do that so we can trust men, and we can trust the opposite sex. We can trust each other to be in a reciprocal, harmonious relationship where we can express what our needs are and how we're feeling and how we're experiencing each other. And then we can work through the illusions that come through, because a lot of it's projection. A lot of it's like, for example, when I would become, very assertive and know what I need and know what I want, that would trigger my husband's trauma, which was, being parented by an adoptive mother who was super hypercritical, domineering, abusive, psychologically manipulative. And so there were times when I would assert my reality and my truth, and it wasn't able to land, because it would make that kind of power made him immediately go into the distorted mother that he had, which is that power was really used to manipulate him as a child. And so we have to see through and beyond the distortion that arises in the relationship and with one another. And this is all messy, and it is fucking hard sometimes. And you question your own reality But it is the work that needs to be done. And I call this the great unraveling. In society, we're going to have to do this as a collective and with each other, because we're moving out of a patriarchal society where extraction and dominance and, being just told like by the authority what to do, and being able to trust, or being forced to trust, that is no longer working. Like, I see this all the time, and it makes me irate when I'm in these women's, motherhood groups on Facebook, and I help women learn their own power to birth at home, which I have done, and without even, too much medical care, because I don't trust the medical situation right now. So why would I put myself in a space under somebody else's authority when I know that they are designed, their protocols, their licensing, their what the doctor, the nurses have to do is traumatizing to a woman, and then she has to live with that for the rest of her life, and the child has now been initiated into this trauma, and it has imprinted them at birth with this trauma that otherwise would not have happened if it was a home birth, and if we as women trusted our own capacity to do this, and if the men in our lives trusted us to do this as well, and if we had community to support the family in this huge transition that serves life. Like, what else is there but birth and life and children? Like, and we all know what it was like to have lost our own childhood to these systems. Like, I remember being, 3, 4, 5 in daycares and in schools, and I was hiding under the table with a stomach ache, and I was chronically ill since I was a child because I was so sensitive to the energies and the fast-paced, like, hustle and bustle that we put our children through. It's traumatic, and our psyches aren't made for that. And you see that even with all of the mental health concerns with our teenagers, and even as young as 7, 8, kids are being hospitalized. There are no hospitals for children experiencing mental illness and suicidality at that young of age. What are we doing in our society that our 7 and 8-year-olds feel like they want to kill themselves? And it comes back to the structure of society being traumatic in and of itself. We need to look at hyper-individuality is not working. Singular households where it's just the mom and dad who are just grinding every day, and then their children are left with scraps of energy and projections of their parents' pain onto them, is painful. And if we're going to interrupt the cycle of trauma just in our social structure, we're not even talking about anything else. We need to take back dominion over ourselves, and we need to learn to be in community with each other with an open heart, but also appropriate boundaries and respect for other people's autonomy and boundaries. And that includes respect for the child, for the teenagers, for the young adults, and for the elderly, and for each person in every stage of life. We have to respect their perception, their experience, where they are right now in their psyche, so that we can hold space and reverence for their human story, and we can hold space for all of the grief that's happening in the world and in our own bodies and in our families and in ourselves. Because what we're doing is we're trying to keep up the facade, and we're on the rat race, because if we stop for just a moment, we're going to be racked with grief. And I understand this so well, because 5 years ago when I left my career and I knew it was killing me, and I knew that there's a different way to live, and I said to myself, I remember it clearly in my mind, something inside of me said, but if I stop, I'm not going to get back up. And that's still something that I am learning to do, to function in a world not from extracting energy from myself, not from forcing myself from beyond my own capacities so that I would be in dis-ease early in my life. Like, I stopped that. There was a commentary section where women were talking about being premenopausal at 30 or 32, 35, and how neurodivergent women are especially seeing this trend in their own bodies. I was screaming about this. Like, I started experiencing that too, where I was like, my menstrual symptoms were so severe. I thought I was getting the flu. When I got my period each month, I would not be able to be at work. I had to sleep during my breaks. I couldn't function because women aren't meant to function in this society the way it's built. And, you know, you can see how sick our society, when our children are sick, the women are sick, and now the men are sick. And I know it's not just the women and children suffering, because I know the men are too. We have done a lot of harm to the men in our society as well. And patriarchy harms men. You know, there's a toxic version of masculinity and a toxic version of femininity, and both of those are hurting every single one of us. And when our children are not safe at birth, and the mother, the matriarch, the feminine who is supposed to roar and defend her children allows the authority to mutilate the tender boy, the innocent boy at birth, then what the fuck is he supposed to do but close off his heart? Not know what it's like to be soft and loving and trust in the feminine that's supposed to take care of him and trust in the world. We all have this wound. It is a wound collectively from Adam and Eve, right? So we, as a collective, if you accept that story in your mind, that the Adam and Eve and that their love, the divine union, which is the masculine and feminine, being in coherence, led to the severance of Adam and Eve and the outcast of Eve and her having to go survive in the world by herself. There's no trust in the natural world. We already believe that we need to survive and struggle for our provisions and for resources, when that's not true. The Native American traditions of saying Sky Woman fell from the earth and she was held by the animals until they went down one by one, searching for the bottom of the ocean to get a bit of land, to build something for her, to sustain her life, to sustain human life. And these animals gave themselves to her. And she didn't turn them away. She said, "Thank you. I will honor you. I will honor your life that you gave for me to live." And then she built Turtle Island and she built land and humanity survived. And then this spirit of reciprocity is at the center of our humanness. And we know that we need to reciprocate to the natural earth and to the beings on earth that are not just the human being, that they were here before us, even in that we are here because of them, and we are responsible not for just managing our own lives and taking care of ourselves in this individualistic, sovereign, I am free, this is a land of the free, but not. Because if your freedom is built on the deprecation and the demise of someone else and another being, it's not freedom. That's extraction, exploitation, and pain. And so we look at this and we look at the history of our human being and even our recent history, and, you know, we're not blaming, we're not shaming. We hold it and we see, look at what's been sacrificed. Look at what's been sacrificed by our ancestors to survive. I honor them. I revere them for what they did, even if sometimes it felt harmful to me because I didn't understand that they were just trying to help me survive. They were trying to help their lineage survive. And even if it came out sideways and it caused my heart to harden and me to wonder what was the fuck wrong with me, that they were treating me this way, but they were like, stand up, you got to survive. We have compassion for all of the expression of the human experience because it's what's allowed us to evolve to this point. And now we get to, at our consciousness now, say there is no separation. Adam and Eve are still locked in the divine union. Shakti and Shiva are still locked within the divine union. And you know what the divine union is? The masculine and feminine holding each other, completing each other in the reverence, in the love, in the truth, and holding each other in the safety of each other's mirror. And what I do to you is what I do to myself. And what I love about you is what I love about myself. And I honor you and I honor myself. And there is nothing that you go through that I don't also go through. And when we treat every human being, every animal on this planet in that energy, and I forgive you because I forgive myself. And when we do that, there is no quarreling with each other. There is no othering. There is no you did this and you're bad. There is no evil. There is just expression and then forgiveness. Because we came here to heal this wound in society. What do we all want? We want to be loved. We want to belong. You know what that requires? Forgiveness and grace and vulnerability to be a human fucking being on this planet in this time right now. And I know that it sounds scary, and there are times where I have had to lay with my neck open to my husband and I'm like, you're hurting me. What you're doing, what you have decided to do in your distortion, the lying, the whatever that's coming back on me, that you're choosing to avoid our family by being distracted by these other things, right? Like I'm wounded here, but I'm still turning in love towards you and I'm saying there's a different way. I know we can transmute this. Please see me, see my pain, see me, see yourself in my pain. And then he'll turn, and when I was able to see that I was also harming him in our relationship, and it wasn't just the man being the problem and the woman being the wounded one or the victim, because again, everything is a mirror, everything has polarity. We are all participating in this grand fucking, illusion, the separation. And so when he was laying with his neck to me and I was doing harm to him by saying, oh, that's not really how you feel, but that's how you feel. But I felt this way first. And then that's, there's a lot that the feminine in our own distortion can do to emotionally manipulate men and make them feel unsafe. There's also narcissism in every being. It's not just a masculine thing. It's not just a feminine thing. And this is the way that the woundedness of each, the masculine and feminine, comes out in distortion in relationship. Learning what this really looks like in relationship, learning how to move through this and to see what's really happening, not because you agree with it, but because the person in front of you is saying, this is what's on my heart. And can you please honor what's on my heart? You don't have to agree necessarily but that's truth. But you need to agree that that's their reality right now. And so I said, I'm sorry that I hurt you in that way. Things that help me in relationship to repair and to move through conflict is to say, I hear your heart. I see your heart, that, your intention was not to do harm. And I would say that too. My intention was not to do harm, but I see a harm was done and I am sorry. And I will repair this behavior for the future. And often when we show that vulnerability and then we show that we're willing to trust and to be in the process with somebody, that's what builds trust for them to then be in the process with us, and it's a symbiotic relationship. And then the distortions that are actually driving the conflict between us actually start to surface, and then both individuals are like, oh wow, I see it. Do you see it? Oh my gosh. My husband and I do that all the time, where we're like, oh my gosh, we didn't used to react like this anymore. But now that we had that talk the other night, I see this thing happening and I see how I'm sabotaging whatever's happening. I have this experience even with people in community. It's not just my husband. When you're leading your own life, you're being sovereign in who you are. It's not because you're so awesome and whatever. That's ego. That's more ego. That's new age bullshit that says sovereignty is just super hyper independence. No, it's actually being in relationship and reciprocal relationships and being able to meet your needs because you express what you want. And that's what I meant to say earlier about those older generations. They never learned that it's safe for them to express what they want. And so we honor that. We see that, okay, I know it's hard for you to express what you need. So I really need you to tell me though, because I want to be here with you and I want to be in community with you. So let me know when you need something this week. We're available to you. And really just expressing that. And eventually people start coming out of those little caves. They start coming out of themselves, their shells. And we earn that trust. And then when we see it, we honor it. And we relish in the fact that they, even no matter how old we are, we can learn new tricks. We can learn to trust each other again. And relationships don't have to be exploitative. And they don't have to, if I start trusting you, then there's this back end fucking shit that's going to come at me for that. And even if that happens, we're not a victim to that either, because we know that people have their own pain and their own story. And if we open ourselves up to somebody and we become vulnerable and then we end up being hurt by their woundedness, it doesn't mean we have to accept being wounded. We just say, oh, I see how they are. I see what they're going through. I see where they're at in their own journey. And you can for sure decide whether or not you want to participate in that. And that's okay. Eckhart Tolle says we don't trust people to be how we want them to be. We trust them to be who they already are. And then when we trust people to be who they already are at their level in their life and their expression of their own humanity, then we can consciously, honestly participate in life with them with open eyes and honesty, instead of having expectations that they're never going to be able to fulfill and expectations that they can never meet, because that's really just our own projection when we have expectations. And I'm really glad you're still here with me. If you are, please comment below. Let me know that you're still here. Let me know what really stands out to you in this video today, because I'm here to help us and I can't do that alone. I am often feeling like I'm just, speaking to the void, and I'll do that until things start resonating. And I'm really happy to just still be here and know that this work that we're doing together, it is us remembering our own humanity and how to be a human in community again. And that's what will build the future. So I'm just so happy. Thank you.